Hi, welcome to the second part of this deeper look into anti-Semitism. In the first part, we examined how anti-Semitism is unique, how long-standing it has been, how universal it is, how intense it is, and how illogical it is. In this second video, I want to start to examine the reasons people give for anti-Semitism. We went out on the streets and we asked people, why does anti-Semitism exist? What are some of the answers that we would get? We've done this with thousands of people, and we find that basically there are six answers, six explanations that people give for anti-Semitism. What do you think they would be? Think for a second what you think are the most common answers. The six that we hear the most, number one, is the idea of control and power. That Jews have disproportionate control and power. Look how many seats they have in Congress. Look at how they control the media, right? Look how they control the banks, et cetera, that this tiny little people has disproportionate control. Number two, the idea that Jews are the chosen people. They think they're better than everyone else. Number three, the idea that it's just Jews are a scapegoat. They just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Number four, outsiders. The Jews are different. They dress differently. They keep to themselves. They eat different food. Jews are different, and they're a minority population wherever they go. Number five, deicide, that Jews killed Jesus, right? This is often quoted as a source for much Christian anti-Semitism, that Jews killed Jesus, and that is the conflict between those two religions. And finally, the six most popular reason anti-Semitism is given is because of race, that Jews are actually an inferior race. We're going to see this is what was propagated by Hitler and the Nazis, and we'll examine a little bit more in depth. The truth is today we're seeing a seventh explanation, and that's Israel. Many people today, the flare-up that we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks, Jews being attacked in the streets like in New York and LA, often has been tied, at least on the surface, to what is happening in Israel, a political conflict happening thousands of miles away. Now, what I would like to do in the next few minutes is really understand, are these really the reasons why anti-Semitism exists, or are they just excuses? How can we know if something is a real reason or if it's an excuse? Well, if we can look at each one and find a time in history where this thing did not exist, this reason did not exist, and yet anti-Semitism still did, it would seem that this is not really the core reason why anti-Semitism exists. So let's jump in. Well, before we do that, let's even look at Israel. Many people today will say, why does anti-Semitism exist? Why are Jews being attacked in the streets of New York and LA? Oh, it's because of Israel. Is Israel the reason why anti-Semitism exists? Of course not. Anti-Semitism has existed for millennia before the state of Israel was even in existence. So maybe today some people use it as an excuse, but the real core, deeper reason why anti-Semitism exists in the world, of course, it has nothing to do with Israel. And that sort of logic is exactly what I want to do with these other six areas. Look at them and say, is this really the core reason why anti-Semitism exists in the world, or is this just an excuse? Let's look at the first one, that Jews have disproportionate control and power. Many, many people believe this is why Jews are hated. Where did this come from? Well, first of all, in modern times, the modern epitome, right, of this is something called the Protocols of Elders of Zion. What was the Protocols of Elders of Zion? It was the supposed minutes of a cabal of Jewish leaders that got together to plan how to take over the world, right? It was written by Tsar Nicholas II. He was being, a revolution was happening against him from the Bolsheviks, and everyone knew who led the Bolsheviks, the Jews. So he figured if he could undermine the Jews, he would undermine the Bolsheviks. This Protocols of Elders of Zion has been translated into languages all over the world. It gives out in New York subways. You can find it on the internet. They say even when Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State of the United States, went and visited certain Arab countries in the 1970s, he was given a copy of the Protocols of Elders of Zion as an official state gift. So is this idea that Jews are rich and powerful the reason for anti-Semitism? So again, like we said before, if we can find times in history that Jews are not rich and powerful, and yet anti-Semitism still existed, then it would seem to be that that's not the real reason, but it's an excuse. And of course that is true. While thankfully, today in the United States of America and other times in Jewish history, Jews have done very well. That has not always been the case. And in fact, for most of Jewish history, when you go through the Middle Ages, when you go for the century after century in Europe, and mainly in Eastern Europe, Jews were the bottom dregs of society. They were poor, right? First of all, they were not allowed into many different occupations, and occupations that certainly were the higher places in society. And Jews were poor. And we know that did not stop the massacres and pogroms that happened over the centuries. Even going into the Holocaust, right? It wasn't about, oh, those Jews are so rich and powerful, let's take all of their power and their riches away from them. That's what they did. But then why didn't they stop there if that's what it was about? Of course, we know they massacred and murdered every Jew, even after they took the riches and power away. And it didn't matter if a Jew was rich or powerful. And the other thing is, if you think about it, if you hate Jews because they're rich and powerful, wouldn't you hate everyone who's rich and powerful? What does that have to do with being Jewish? It really seems that that's just an excuse. The second explanation that's given is this idea that the Jews are a chosen people, that somehow Jews believe they're better than everyone else. They think they're better, and that's why we hate them. First thing we have to understand is when there is a Jewish concept called chosen people. Do we believe that we're better than other people? If you go into Jewish tradition, Jewish texts, really no. What we say is not so much that the Jews were chosen, but that the Jews chose God, right? The idea is that the Jews said, we want to stand up and have a certain amount of responsibility for the world. We want to make the world a better place. And in turn, when you read the Torah, the relationship between God and Abraham and Sarah, the beginning of the Jewish people, it was relationship of saying, you are going to be a role model, but you then are responsible, like I said, for making the world a better place. It doesn't mean that Jews are born smarter. They're not born with any advantage. It doesn't mean that they're born better than anyone else. They have a unique role. We believe the Jewish people have a unique role to bring morality and values to the world. But now let's look, is this really the reason why Jews are hated? Well, has there been a time in Jewish history when Jews said, we are not the chosen people? This is not really part of our philosophy. In fact, it has been. In the 1800s in Germany, there was a movement of Jews who said, we are not Jews. In fact, we are Germans of the Mosaic faith. What were they saying? They were saying, we're not a fifth column. We're not any different than you Germans. We are Germans. Okay, we have different traditions. We have different holidays, but we are first and foremost Germans. And part of that is they said, of course, we don't have another homeland. We're not looking to leave this country. This is our country, Germany. And so they said, Berlin is our Jerusalem. That became part of their philosophy. They separated themselves from the land of Israel. Additionally, they said, we're not a different people. We're not a chosen people. There's nothing different about us. Now that divorcing of this idea of chosen people, you would think anti-Semitism would go down. And we know as the 1800s turned into the 1900s and this movement grew and grew and grew, that did not get rid of anti-Semitism. And in fact, we saw through the Holocaust, the worst outbreaks of anti-Semitism the Jewish people have probably ever seen in their history. Additionally, are Jews the only people that claim we're the chosen people? In fact, not at all. Many peoples claim they're the chosen people. In fact, I'm not an expert on Christianity and Islam, but really, from what I understand, a core part of those religions as well say that they, in fact, are the chosen people. You can see the middle quote here from Louis Farrakhan, the head of the Nation of Islam. How in the world could God continue to choose you, talking about the Jews, over the violation of the agreement? Somebody else has given a chance now. God has chosen us. It's also a core part of Christian philosophy, right? The Jews were chosen, they messed up, and now there's a different way to be chosen. You see on the upper right corner, the Japanese flag, the land of the rising sun. This whole idea of Japanese, why do they have the sun? The rising sun is a symbol, right, of their expansive power, of their ability to go and expand into other places of Europe, that they have been chosen, so to speak, to continue. Even in American history, we have our example of being chosen. Manifest destiny. God has chosen us to go west. He has chosen us to take over this land. Many people say they're chosen. Other religions say they're chosen. But yet only the Jews are targeted and persecuted. And the reason is given because of the chosen people. Again, it doesn't seem to make much sense. The third reason given is the idea of the scapegoat theory, that Jews just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. I was taught this when I was in high school. We were taking European history, got to the idea of the Holocaust, and this is what I was taught. You know, Jews they were a small minority, they were an easy target, and it was easy for the Germans to point the finger at them. You know, many of us, I'm sure, have seen the stadiums filled with people listening to Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was an amazing orator, and he'd be able to rile up the stadium and talking about how he was going to bring Germany back from the loss in World War I, that disgrace of what happened in that World War. And he was going to bring the Germans back from the depression, the economic depression that they were facing. And how was he going to do it? By targeting that one people that were causing all the problems. And who is that people? Imagine if Hitler said, you know who that people is? It's the midgets. The midgets? What are you talking about? I think the reaction of the people would be, I can't see your faces right now, but probably how many of you are looking at me. What in the world is he talking about? But when Hitler said it's the Jews, everyone said, oh, yes, it's the Jews. Why did they not question that? Why wasn't that crazy? So I would put forth that it wasn't that the Jews just happened to be in a wrong place at the wrong time. Oh, it was an easy target, because there could have been a lot of targets. Really, it wasn't that Hitler pointed to the Jews and that caused the anti-Semitism. It was that Hitler knew there was already a hatred of the Jew, and that's why he was able to point at them. This is the classic idea that's talked about, you know, putting the cart in front of the horse, right? It wasn't that the Jews were hated because Hitler pointed at them because they were in the wrong place. It was that they already were hated. And that's why Hitler was able to point at them. And so this idea of just being a scapegoat, again, does not make much sense. We're going to end this video now. We've reviewed these first 3 reasons why people give for anti-Semitism. We've really seen this idea of Jews are rich and powerful. They claim they're chosen people, that we're just a scapegoat, really does not make sense. And in the next video, we'll review the other 3 main reasons people give for anti-Semitism.